Hey, what up guys? In this video, I'm going to show you how to code the UI for Instagram using Flutter. And as I always do on this channel, I'm going to create this completely from scratch. Creating UIs is one of Flutter's strengths, and I hope this tutorial is helpful for anyone trying to learn how to code. A couple of things to mention though before we get started. You can get this code for free on my GitHub, which I'll link below. And the other thing is, the main purpose of this video is to demonstrate how you would create the user interface of an app like Instagram. So when it comes to things like icons, I'm just going to use the default icons provided by Flutter, but of course you can polish it and make it prettier using custom icons of your choice. The last thing is, I'm going to create every page except for the Reels page because, as we all know, it's a TikTok knockoff, so I'll make a separate video for that. Cool, without any further ado, let's get started. So I've opened up a brand new Flutter project, and let's delete everything below the main function so that we can create this from scratch. So let's create a new folder called homepage.dart, and let's create a blank scaffold, and this is where we're going to begin. So in the scaffold, the first thing I want to do is to sort out the bottom navigation. Okay, so we're going to have just the body in the middle, and the bottom navigation bar is the menu at the bottom, and inside it's going to require a bottom navigation bar item, and let's put in a icon for now, see how that looks. Now it looks like there's an error because it wants at least 2 items, so let's copy and put in a few more. Looks like there's another error. They want us to make sure to give it a label, so we gave it an icon, let's just give it a label as well. Let's just call them all home just to see it working, and sweet, there it is. One problem with this is if you add more than 3 or 4 navigation bar items, we have to specify something, which is this type, the bottom navigation bar type fixed, and everything should show up again. So in Instagram, we have 5 tabs. We have home, search, reels, shop, and account. Now, by the way, the main point of this video is the UI and the layout of it, so I'm just going to use the basic icons. So there might not be the exact icons that you see in the actual Instagram app, but replacing icons is not too big of a deal. So just to keep this video really simple, I'm just going to use the default icons in the Flutter framework. Now the next thing is we want to make this functional. So you can see like the home is highlighted at the bottom, and I want to be able to click around and navigate. So that's where this current index is going to come handy. So let's create an integer called selected index, and the start is going to be 0 at home. So 0 is home, and you can see if I say like selected index is 2, then the reels one should be highlighted. So we want to navigate this around when the user taps on the screen, right? So on tap, let's create a new method called navigate bottom bar, and just update the selected index to whatever the user tapped. Now the next thing is to show the different pages for each of these tabs. So let's create this. I'm going to create a list of widgets, and let's just call it children. And in here, I'm just going to put in some basic text widget just to see if this is functional or not. Okay, so in the body, we want to display the children, but at the selected index. Cool, and you can see as we click around, now our body is also changing with it. So now we have these 5 different pages to set up. Let's create a new folder called pages, and I want to create these 5 Dart files. Okay, so make sure to import your material.dart file, and let's call these user home, and just separate these out into different scaffolds so that we can encapsulate the code to make it nice and clean. So then we can just import user home, and we're going to do the same thing for the other pages. So user search, user reels, user shop, and user account. Cool, so that's just a nice basic setup for any app really. And the first thing we're going to do is let's work with the home page. Okay, so let's start off with an app bar, and on the top we just want to say okay, Instagram, and have some icons on the right side. There's our app bar. Now it's blue, so I don't want that to be blue, so let's make it transparent. And our elevation, let's make it 0. And it looks like the text became white, so let's make the text black. And actually I should just show you guys a way to change the colors for the entire app. So if you go to the main function in the material app, you can create this theme, and the primary swatch is the primary color. And so before we had blue, at the app bar, right? So if I just make it gray and I just get rid of the transparent color, you can obviously set a color for the entire app this way, right? So again, I just want to make this transparent. Now, those icons, the plus and the heart and the share icon, I want that on the complete right hand side. So that's going to be in a row of their own. And in the parent row, we're going to specify this main axis alignment and go space between. And then just looking at the row of icons, I feel like we could spread this out a little bit. So let's use some padding. Cool, so that's just our app bar done. And in the body, we're going to structure this with stories at the top and then just the user posts following that. So the stories is, first of all, it's just a bunch of circles, right? So we're going to have containers. Let's get the color to be gray. A basic container is going to be a square like this, so I want to change it to a circle, which means if you specify the decoration, then you have to put the color inside the decoration. And I think we can make these circles a bit bigger, maybe a bit smaller actually. So here I'm going to create another folder called util, and I'm going to create some widgets in here that we're going to reuse. So these bubble stories we're going to reuse a lot, and just copy that circle that we made into the bubble stories file, because then in the code that we're working with, we can just call it bubble stories. Makes it much more cleaner and easier to read, and we can create a bunch of them. And if we come back to the bubble stories, I actually want to make it a column so that I have the name underneath, like a text widget. So yeah, something like that. And when it comes to spacing things out, you can use padding or size box depending on the situation. Sometimes one might be better than the other, but I'm going to put a size box of 10 just to space it out a bit. And of course, we don't want to just fix a string called name for everyone. We want to pass through a variable, a parameter. And specifically, I want this to be a string. So let's make sure we require a string. And now in our homepage, we can just easily create these stories. Okay, so all of these ones are going to require a text. So let's just put some random names in. And there we go. And there's our first sort of issue, which is it's overflowing. We have too many stories. So the way we want to deal with this is instead of using a row now, let's change this to a list view. And basically what a list view does is it makes it scrollable. Change the scroll direction to be horizontal because it'll be vertical by default. And wrap this in a container of a height 130. Instead of hard coding these texts, let's create a list of people and put the names in this list. And the reason why this is useful is because in reality, we might not know how many people to display, right? So this is why instead of just using a simple list view, you can use a list view builder, which basically just builds it dynamically, right? So if I show you here, we're going to return the same bubble stories, but we can specify this item count, and the item count is going to be the length of the list of people. Right, so this way we can just dynamically add people to this list and the code becomes much more usable. Let's also remember to make the scroll direction horizontal. Okay, time for the posts. So let's create a new file for the user posts and put it in our util folder. And for this, let's start off with a square, like a gray box. Maybe a bit taller. Cool, so yeah, this is where your picture is going to go. Now, around the post, we first have to display the name on top of it. So let's create a row. And we're going to have a little circle again. That's for the profile photo. And next to it, we have the name. Let's add some padding here. Let's make it padding of 20, maybe 16. And let's put a little space between the profile picture and the name. And one thing is actually, looks like we made this in a stateful widget. Let's just copy everything in the body and just actually recreate this as a stateless widget. Sorry. Let's create this as a stateless widget. There's no actual need for this to be a stateful widget. And let's create a constructor for a name that we can pass through. And for now, let's just say code other friend. Cool, that's looking good. Now I think the name should be bold. So let's make it bold. And to the very right of this, we should have an icon. In the actual Instagram app, it's meant to be 3 dots, but I'm just going to use a menu icon. Again, changing the icons and just polishing it up is the easy part. So I'm just going to use the default icons. And main axis alignment space between just to spread it out. Now, if you have a look at what's below the post, we have some buttons and comments and things like that, right? So let's do this. So the first is the icons, the heart icon, the chat bubble, and also a sharing button. And on the very right hand side, we have a saving icon. It's like a bookmark icon, really. We should look for bookmark. And I'm just gonna wrap the first three in a separate row so that we can space these out properly. And below the icons, we then see in the comments like liked by Mitch and others. And if you look at the way Instagram did it, the names are bold, whereas like liked by, that text is just normal. So there's a couple of ways we could do it. Now I just want to show you the first naive way to go about creating something like this, and you can see sort of the issues involved with that. Okay, so I'm going to use a row and put a couple of text widgets in there. And I just want to make the second text widget bold, followed by another text widget that isn't bold, and followed by others, which is also bold. And now for the caption, we actually have caption and then comments. So for the caption, again, I'm just going to copy what we had before, and I want to show you a problem that we're going to run into using these rows. So let's say the user is coded a friend and he has this caption. If the caption is too long, you can see in the row it overflows. We had a similar issue earlier in the video. And the way to handle the situation is to use a rich text. So if you know you're going to have a lot of text widgets, and especially some of them you want bold and some of them you want not bold, then this is the widget to use. So in the rich text, you have different text spans, which are just basically text widgets that you can control. So you can set the default text style, and you can see if I save this, if you use a rich text widget, it just flows onto the next, the word filthy, like it just goes onto the next line. So we're not going to have any overflow problems there. Okay, that's good. So now that we have the post set up, come to the home.dart, and in the posts, we're only displaying one post right now. So let's create a list view builder and create a bunch of posts. And for the item count, let's just say however many people that we have. One thing you'll face when you work with list views is it needs a specified height. So let's give it an expanded widget. And there we go. We can have a bunch of scrollable posts in our homepage. Let's close all of these tabs. One thing you can see is like Obama, like if the text is not enough, then it's kind of like in the center aligned. So if you go to the overall column, you can specify this cross-axis alignment to become start, and then it will just all shift to the left and begin from there. Okay, cool. So now that that's done, let's move on to the search tab, which look a lot simpler. So we'll just have a search bar at the top, and we're going to use a grid in the middle. So on the top, we're going to have a row. And let's make this app transparent, the app bar transparent. And let's actually put this row inside a container so that we can give it a color. And my favorite widget, Clip Rect, makes the corners rounder, which is much more attractive. And let's change up these colors a little bit so that it's more suitable. So I'm just going to use different shades of gray. And under the search bar, let's create a new file in our utilities called Explore Grid. And this one I'm just going to use a very basic grid view builder. Okay, so grid view builder, very similar to a list view builder, but we're going to create grids. And this cross-axis counts, you can specify how many you want in each row. And we're just going to create some basic containers and import it into our search page. Now, if you save this, you'll see a bunch of scrollable grids. Now, the padding is a bit too much. Let's shorten the padding. Yep, that looks a bit better. And just quickly moving on to the shop. The shop is also very similar to the search bar. So I'm just going to copy this in. Of course, remember you guys, you can grab this code for free in my GitHub below. So make sure to check it out. And I'm going to create another grid called shop grid, very similar to the explore grid. And I'm just going to change the colors. That's all. My simulator is making my computer a bit laggy, so I'm just going to run the rest of this video using this Chrome browser. Which brings us to the last tab, which is the account tab. So in our scaffold, let's create a column first off, and we're going to create the first row which is going to be the profile picture. So we're gonna have to make this a circle, and let's give it a height and width of 100 for now. Let's see how that looks. So this is going to be the profile picture, and then we also need the numbers, right? So the number of followings and followers and stuff like that. So next to it, let's create a column and start to put some text widgets on top of each other. And the number I'm going to make bold and a little bit bigger. It's a bit too big. Okay, let's copy this column and create a few more. So one for posts, one for followers, and one for following. Now in this row, let's space it out. Okay, it looks a bit better. And the row itself, I'm going to add a padding. And let's put the numbers in a row so that we can go space between. And yeah, I think that looks good enough for now. So underneath this, we're going to need to create the name and the bio, right? So I'm just going to copy what my page would look like. So you have the name Coco, which is bold, and then under that you got your little bio. I create apps and games, and beneath that we want a link, right? So a link that's blue. Oh, and looks like we have some issues here, and that's because we put this in the wrong position. We need to put this in a column, add some padding, and change this cross-axis alignment to start, and that's looking much more closer to what we want. I think we could space the text out a little bit. Now below this, we should see some buttons. There's like a few rectangle buttons. So you can like edit the profile. So let's make this closer to what the Instagram UI would look like. We're going to need to make sure to round these corners, most important thing, and change it to gray. It's not looking exactly how I want it. Let's get rid of this clip our rect widget and specify the border manually. So the border radius, let's make it 5. And yeah, I think that's better. Wrap it in an expanded widget and create a few more of these. And the buttons are edit profile, add tools, and insights. And just a little bit of padding to space these out properly. Okay, looks like there's a bit of an error because the parent of the expanded widget should be a row or a column. So, which means we have to swap the padding and the expanded widget here, which conveniently there's actually an option to do this for us. So you can see swap with parent. So we want the expanded widgets on the outside, and yeah, much better. Okay, and below that, we want to create the stories, right? Your highlights. And so this is why creating those bubble stories earlier is so useful, because then we can just recreate them. And there they are. So you got the first few stories there. Now the main challenge with this account is actually I want to say challenge, but the main twist with this page is the default tab controller. So you're going to wrap your entire scaffold with a default tab controller, and let's specify the length to be 4. And so inside the children of the code, we're going to create a tab bar and create these 4 tabs. And basically what this does is it's these tabs we click around and show the different pages, but within this particular page. So in our utilities, we're going to create 4 more files to represent each of these tabs. So account tab 1, account tab 2, 3, and 4. And for each of these ones, I'm just going to copy in the code because it's just a basic grid, which I've already shown how to do, and just change the colors up a bit. Okay, so they're just grids that we want to show in our tab bar view. Okay, let's see how this looks. So hopefully the functionality works, and it does. We can click around and there it is. Now obviously there's a lot of room for improvement here. Like there's a lot of things we could polish up. You know, like I said, the first thing is the icons. You could change the icons to make it more fancy. And the other thing is, especially if you're a beginner and you made a UI like this. If you want to take it to the next level and create some backend and things like that, you can always know that each of these widgets, you can just add a widget called a gesture detector and give it a function. Same thing with all of these icons, right? Like if you go to the home, well, why is the account there? We should put the account in our pages folder. But yeah, as I was saying, like if you just take any of these icons, for example, in the home page, you can just wrap it in a gesture detector and specify something to do when you tap it. So that's what you would do if you want to take this UI to the next level. If you have any questions about the code, just leave a comment and I'll help you out. But other than that, that's it for this video. If this was helpful, give this video a like, and if you're new here, then make sure to subscribe, because in the next few days and weeks, I'll be creating the UI for all of the other big social media apps like TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, and so on. And of course, I'm going to be creating them from scratch. That's it for this week, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Laters.